Naomi Grant had 15 minutes to spare and no patience to waste. The blazer she wore was one size too large. The morning meeting had gone longer than expected, and traffic in the city was crawling like molasses. But she didn't complain. She walked with purpose, straight into Form Boutique where silence was curated, and suspicion came free of charge. The moment she touched the door handle, a man blocked her path. Tall, square-jawed, wearing a black jacket with a security badge and the posture of a bouncer. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, voice firm. "I'll need to take your bag before you enter." Naomi stared at him. "Come again." "Store policy," he said. "You can reclaim it after checkout." She turned her head. Just 10 seconds earlier, a woman had walked in with a purse bigger than hers, white, middle-aged, 2 bags over her shoulder. No one had stopped her. Naomi looked back at him. "So, just me." He didn't blink. "Company rules, not personal." Naomi smiled, not kindly. "Rules that only apply to people who look like me, apparently." She didn't hand over her bag. She stepped around him, quiet, graceful, knowing she'd just lit the fuse. Inside, the boutique was all clean lines, muted tones, and soft jazz humming from ceiling speakers. A single rack of blazers stood near the center, priced more like mortgages than clothing. Naomi touched the sleeve of one and breathed slowly. She wasn't angry. Not yet. Just alert. Then came the eyes. A saleswoman. Then a second. Then a manager, Julia Hartman. Platinum hair, high heels, and an expression like polished stone. None of them smiled. When Naomi entered the fitting room, she expected privacy. What she got was a man standing just outside, and a manager leaning too close. "You don't mind keeping the curtain open, do you?" Julia asked. Naomi raised an eyebrow. "Yes, I do. You understand," Julia added. "We've had incidents." Naomi crossed her arms. "Incidents of what, Dylan's?" They told her it was for security. They told her she wasn't the first. They told her to undress again. Even when she said no. Even when she asked for a manager. Even when she made it clear she knew her rights. And when she reached for her phone, they told her that made her suspicious. Within 20 minutes, police had been called. The store locked down. She stood accused of stealing a wallet she hadn't touched. Her body already searched. Her words ignored. They thought she was just another woman they could corner. What they didn't know, Naomi wasn't just a shopper. She was a civil rights attorney. And her next meeting was with the mayor. Naomi Grant wasn't someone you'd remember for causing a scene. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't pace when she was upset. She simply watched, measured, precise. And when she spoke, it felt like a question had been filed in the court of your conscience. She didn't walk into Form Boutique that day to challenge anyone. She just wanted a navy blazer and 15 quiet minutes. But what she walked into was something no return policy could fix. The store was known for its subtle wealth, earth-tone walls, soft jazz overhead, one scent of expensive perfume floating from the vents. Not many customers at noon, just enough to keep the staff sharp. Naomi entered with the quiet confidence of someone who knew what she came for. But the door had barely shut behind her when a uniformed guard stepped forward and blocked her path. "Ma'am, I need you to hand over your bag," said Vince Keller, head of in-store security. His voice wasn't hostile, just firm, like someone who had said this same sentence 50 times before and no longer questioned why. Naomi raised an eyebrow and gestured toward 2 other shoppers, both white, both carrying tote bags twice the size of hers. Vince didn't blink. "Company policy," he said. "You're not the first." Naomi could have walked away. She didn't. She stepped past him calmly and made her way to the Blazers. She didn't want trouble. She wanted accountability. If that made her difficult, so be it. She knew how this worked. She'd spent her entire adult life reading between the lines of things no one wanted to say out loud. The store manager, Julia Hartman, noticed her the moment she stepped inside. Julia had the air of someone who got promoted not because she was good with people, but because she was good at managing what made corporate nervous. Tall, efficient, emotionally frostbitten. She watched Naomi closely, and Naomi watched her back. After a few minutes, Naomi took 2 jackets into the fitting room. She removed her coat, then the first blazer, and stood in front of the mirror when she heard footsteps outside. The curtain fluttered. "Ma'am," Vince's voice came from just beyond the thin divider. "I can't leave you in there unattended. I'll have to observe for security." Naomi stepped away from the mirror, heart rate steady. "Excuse me," she said. "This is a fitting room. You'll have to leave the curtain open," said Julia, who'd now joined Vince. "Just protocol. No offense, of course." Naomi didn't respond right away. She didn't need to. The silence was its own indictment. Still, she didn't protest. She adjusted her shirt and opened the curtain herself. She didn't raise her voice, didn't curse, didn't cry. She just stood there, forcing them to look at what they'd become. Moments later, she stepped out fully dressed and asked for her purse back. Vince shook his head. "You think you can take something and walk out? Doesn't work that way." Naomi frowned. "You're saying I stole something?" He didn't answer. Julia stepped forward. "Please remain calm. We've had incidents lately. We're doing what's necessary." Naomi's phone buzzed in her pocket. She checked the screen. It was a call. She didn't answer a familiar number from the mayor's office. Instead, she slid the phone back into her pocket and raised her voice for the first time. "Then call the police," she said, "because I'm not leaving until you return my property." Julia didn't hesitate. She turned to the register and whispered to Marty, the floor assistant, "Close the doors. No one leaves. Emergency lockdown." Customers looked around. A few grumbled, confused. Naomi stood tall, watching it all unfold like a chessboard clicking into place. And then, from the corner of the store, came a voice. A young woman, early 20s, pulled out her phone. I saw everything. She said her name was Emily Waters. She was a shopper, just like Naomi, except she'd never been asked to hand over her belongings. She'd recorded the interaction, every second. She didn't steal anything. "You're making a mistake." Julia ignored her. "Please stay out of this," she said. "This doesn't concern you." But Emily didn't put the phone away. She stood firm, eyes locked on Naomi, then turned her camera to Julia. "Actually, it concerns all of us." Before anyone could respond, 2 officers walked in. One was Ray Delaney, who barely let the door close before asserting authority. "What's the issue?" Julia pointed at Naomi. "Possible theft. Non-compliant behavior. Item found in her bag, brand new wallet." Ray turned toward Naomi, like she'd already confessed. "Miss, do you have something you want to explain?" Naomi narrowed her eyes. "Yes, that I've been profiled and harassed in front of witnesses, and that what you're doing right now violates my rights." Ray raised a hand. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Either cooperate here, or we take this downtown." "I'm not going anywhere," Naomi said. "And I'm not undressing for you." Ray stepped forward. "You don't want to do this the hard way." Naomi didn't flinch. There is no easy way when the law forgets who it works for. Vince held up her purse. "We found this inside." Ray took the wallet, examined the price tag. "Still sealed," he said. "Ma'am, that's enough. Turn around." Naomi refused. "That is not my wallet, and you know it." But Ray had heard enough. He reached for his cuffs. "Last chance." Naomi didn't move. Julia whispered, "She's resisting." Ray raised his voice. "You are under arrest." And then the phone rang again. Naomi answered on speaker. "Naomi Grant," she said calmly. "Naomi, this is Ellis from the mayor's office. We've been trying to reach you. Are you safe?" Everyone froze. Ray blinked. Julia stepped back. Naomi kept her eyes forward. "No, but you're on speaker." A pause. Then a second voice came through. Deeper. Commanding. "This is Sheriff Nolan. Officer Delaney. You are to stand down. Immediately." Ray's face dropped. "Any further action will be considered obstruction and unlawful detainment," the sheriff said. Ray hesitated. Naomi turned, faced him directly. Her voice didn't shake. "You came here thinking I was a problem. I came here hoping to buy a jacket. And now, we both know which of us really doesn't belong here." Officer Ray Delaney's hands hovered midair, still gripping the cold steel of his cuffs. His mouth opened as if to argue, but no words came out. Sheriff Nolan's voice crackled through Naomi Grant's phone with the kind of authority that doesn't ask for compliance, it assumes it. The room had gone silent. Even Julia, who only moments ago wielded her manager's badge like a shield, was shrinking behind the register. Vince Keller stood at the edge of the fitting room, suddenly unsure whether he should be standing at all. But Naomi didn't smirk. She didn't gloat or whisper "told you so." She lowered her phone calmly and tucked it into her pocket, then locked eyes with Ray and spoke with a voice even more commanding than Nolan's. "You had no right to touch me, no right to search my belongings, and definitely no right to assume my guilt just because I told you no." Ray finally found his voice. "Look, I didn't know who you were." Naomi tilted her head. "And if I were someone else, if I weren't who I am, would you have treated me differently?" He said nothing. Julia stepped forward in his place. "We were only following protocol." Naomi turned to her. Not angry, just direct. "Show me that protocol. Show me the part where customers are required to undress while being watched. Show me where it says a wallet planted in someone's bag counts as evidence, or better, show it to the camera." She pointed at Emily, who was still recording from the corner. Phone steady, expression unreadable. The tension in the room hung like smoke. That's when the next fuse lit. Sheriff Nolan's voice returned. "Clear as ever, Officer Delaney. As of now, you're suspended from duty pending investigation. Hand over your firearm and badge to the responding unit arriving shortly." Ray stiffened. He looked at Naomi like a man looking for a way out. "Ma'am, please, I have a family." Naomi nodded. "So do I." He handed over his gun slowly, then unclipped his badge, placing both on the counter like broken promises. The silence deepened, and Julia took a single shaky step back. But Naomi wasn't finished. "I want the store closed for the day," she said, addressing Julia. "I want a written public apology from your corporate office, and I want you, personally, to take a sensitivity and civil rights training course before you ever manage another retail location again." Julia's voice trembled. For the first time. "You're going to destroy my career." Naomi didn't flinch. "You already destroyed it the moment you used your position to humiliate someone who'd done nothing wrong. I'm just asking you to repair what you broke." Vince, who had remained mostly quiet, finally spoke. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Naomi turned slowly. "When you stopped me at the door, you didn't see a lawyer. You didn't see a mother. You saw a threat. That's not about policy. That's about programming." He looked down. "No more excuses." Emily stepped forward, shutting off her recording. "I'll send this to the local news. But more importantly, I'll testify. If she wants me to." Naomi looked at her for a long beat. "No, I'm not going to court. This isn't about a courtroom. This is about conscience." And yet, the confrontation had only just reached its third act. As law enforcement arrived to relieve Ray and debrief Naomi, an assistant from the mayor's office arrived breathless, wide-eyed, and clearly rattled. "We lost contact with you," she said. "The mayor's ready to go public. He wants to stand beside you." Naomi shook her head. "This isn't about a press conference. This is about accountability." She turned toward the room. "We don't need headlines. We need reflection." Then she paused and said something that didn't come from her resume or her policy work, but from something older, something personal. "When I was 10, she said softly, "my mother took me shopping. A clerk followed us the entire time. She said it was because my mom looked like someone who'd caused problems. I didn't understand what that meant then. I do now." The room stayed still. Naomi continued, "I promised myself that when I got older, I would never let anyone make me feel like that again. And today, I kept that promise." Julia was crying now quietly, as if hoping no one would notice. Naomi didn't offer comfort. She offered clarity. "I'm not angry, but I'm not forgiving you either. Not today. Because forgiveness doesn't mean freedom from consequence. It means responsibility was accepted, and I haven't seen that yet." She turned to Emily again. "Upload the footage. Don't tag me. Don't use my name. Let people see the system, not the survivor." Emily nodded slowly. "You got it." One of the officers came to escort Ray outside. As he walked past Naomi, he paused, then said quietly, "You're right. I forgot what this badge was supposed to mean." Naomi didn't reply, not because she didn't believe him, but because it wasn't her job to fix him. A few minutes later, she gathered her coat, picked up her untouched blazer, and walked to the door. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. The story wasn't over. It was just leaving the boutique. The world didn't find out what happened in Form Boutique because Naomi Grant stormed out screaming. It didn't go viral because she shouted on camera or cursed anyone out. The story spread because she didn't. Because she handled the moment with such unsettling precision that the silence afterward became louder than any outburst could have. 3 hours after she left the store, the footage Emily had captured was uploaded to a small, local activism page. No hashtags, no outrage, no name, just a quiet caption. "What happens when the wrong person is treated like a criminal?" Within 24 hours, it was shared 600,000 times. The comment section flooded not just with outrage, but with stories. Stories from people who'd been followed, accused, humiliated. The same script, the same assumptions, different cities, different bodies. But what most people didn't know, not until 2 days later, was who Naomi really was. At the time of the incident, she wasn't just shopping for a blazer. She was scheduled to present a draft of a new city ordinance, the Retail Equal Access Act, at a closed-door meeting with city officials. The proposed law aimed to prohibit racial profiling and forced searches in retail spaces, giving customers legal protection and retailers clear guidelines. Naomi had helped write every line. The irony was too sharp to ignore. The woman they accused of stealing had been fighting to protect them from themselves. She hadn't just survived the experience, she'd prepared for it. And that changed everything. Inside her apartment, Naomi sat at her dining table, laptop open, surrounded by highlighted documents and legal briefs. She didn't read the headlines. She didn't refresh her mentions. Her work wasn't about trends, it was about systems. And systems didn't change because people got mad. They changed because someone kept showing up after the anger faded. Her phone buzzed. It was the mayor. He wanted to hold a joint press conference. He said it was important for people to see her face, to humanize the issue. Naomi paused before responding. That's exactly the problem. She said, this issue doesn't need a face. It needs a law. But Naomi wasn't avoiding the spotlight out of fear. She just had a different plan. 2 days later, she walked into City Hall not as a victim, not as a symbol, but as a policy strategist. She entered the chamber wearing a black blazer and no makeup, flanked not by bodyguards, but by quiet determination. She submitted the final proposal for the Retail Equal Access Act, now revised with real-time annotations from her experience. She added clauses about fitting room surveillance, defined limits for search and detainment, and required anti-bias training for all retail staff within city limits. She also submitted the full video footage, not to the press, but to the city's Civil Rights Oversight Committee. Because Naomi didn't want headlines, she wanted precedent. That same afternoon, she made one final stop back at Forum Boutique. She didn't go alone. She brought a city mediator and a legal liaison. Julia Hartman stood behind the same register, pale and tight-lipped. Vince Keller was gone quietly. Let go 2 days prior. Naomi didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. This is not a lawsuit, she began. Not yet. I'm giving you one opportunity to take responsibility. Not because you were caught, but because it's right. Julia swallowed hard. I've already submitted a letter to corporate. I know what happened was wrong. I didn't expect anyone important. She stopped herself. Naomi didn't blink. Anyone important to fight back. Julia looked away. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, Naomi said. You did. You just didn't expect to be in the room with someone who had power to respond. But what you still don't realize is everyone in that room had power. Even Emily, who filmed it. Even the woman you turned away last month for being suspicious. You treated them like they had none. Julia's voice dropped. I'm sorry. Naomi stood firm. Then prove it. The agreement was simple. Forum would enroll all employees in a mandatory civil rights training course within 30 days. Julia would step down as manager and take a reassignment role at another location pending review. The store would publicly acknowledge its failure, not just in PR language, but in actual policy. And if they failed to comply, Naomi would proceed with legal action not just against the store, but against the chain, the parent company, and every partner brand that stood by in silence. They signed the agreement on site. But Naomi didn't stop there. She requested that the footage Emily recorded be used in future employee training videos. Not to shame, but to educate. I don't want people fired, she said. I want them reprogrammed. That decision sparked debate online. Some said she was too soft. Others praised her restraint. Naomi ignored both. Her mission had always been bigger than revenge. She wasn't trying to cancel a store. She was trying to reset the standard. 3 weeks later, the Retail Equal Access Act passed its first city vote unanimous. Businesses began updating their procedures. Signs went up in dressing rooms, affirming customer privacy rights. Training modules were updated, reviewed, and implemented. But the impact wasn't just institutional. It was human. Ray Delaney, now under review, wrote a personal letter to Naomi. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He explained where he came from, a family of cops, raised to assume suspicion was the safest route. He admitted that he didn't see Naomi. He saw a narrative he'd been taught to protect, and he promised to do better. Naomi read the letter. She didn't respond. Not because she was angry, but because she'd already said everything that mattered. In every step she took after Form tried to erase her. She understood something most people didn't. Justice doesn't always come with an apology. Sometimes it comes with systems forced to change against their own inertia. That was the real twist. Not that Naomi was powerful, but that she was prepared. Not that she was right, but that she refused to let wrong win just because it was convenient. She didn't break the system. She made it look in the mirror. Naomi Grant never raised her voice. She didn't have to. By the time she walked out of Form Boutique, the story had already begun rewriting itself, not through rage, but through clarity. 2 days later, the video Emily posted, quiet, untagged, unedited, had gone viral. Not because Naomi had been loud, but because the silence around her was louder. Viewers didn't just see a woman wrongly accused. They saw themselves. The footage sparked something deeper than anger. It sparked memory. And for Naomi, it activated something else: strategy. What no one knew was that Naomi hadn't just walked into the boutique that day as a shopper. She is on her way to present a new civil ordinance, the Retail Equal Access Act, a bill she co-authored to stop exactly this kind of profiling. Her life's work had collided with her lived experience, and she wasn't going to waste it. Instead of seeking the spotlight, Naomi submitted her testimony and the footage to the city's Civil Rights Board. She rewrote the ordinance with updated clauses, protections for fitting room privacy, clearer rules around search consent, mandatory bias training in retail. When the board saw the footage, the vote was unanimous: fast-track the bill. But Naomi wasn't finished. She returned to Form not with a camera, but with a mediator. Julia Hartman stood behind the counter, pale, quiet, no longer in control. Vince had already been let go. "This isn't a lawsuit," Naomi said. "This is a final opportunity to take responsibility before the law forces you to—" Julia stammered out an apology. "I didn't know who you were," Naomi replied calmly. "And if I were someone else, you would have treated me worse." That's the problem. The resolution was simple: public apology, civil rights training for all staff, Julia's resignation from management. Naomi also requested that Emily's footage be used in future training, not to shame, but to teach. People online debated her decision: not harsh enough, too lenient, but Naomi didn't respond. She wasn't interested in punishment. She was building precedent, in private. Officer Delaney wrote her a letter. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He admitted his bias. He said he'd failed her and the badge. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. The bill passed its first vote. Stores began updating policy. Dressing rooms posted signs about privacy rights. Naomi's name was never in the press. That was intentional. The real twist wasn't her identity. It was her preparation. She didn't fight back with rage. She fought with law, with language, with restraint. She didn't burn the system down. She forced it to rewrite itself. Naomi Grant never saw herself as a symbol. She didn't want headlines, hashtags, or 100 interviews. She wanted to be left alone to buy a blazer. But when the moment came and the room turned against her, she didn't panic. She didn't plead. She chose something harder. She stood still. Weeks after the incident, long after the footage had gone viral and the city council had approved the first stage of her ordinance, Naomi found herself walking past that same boutique. She didn't go inside. She didn't need to. It had already changed, and so had the people inside it. But that wasn't the victory. The real win wasn't what they passed. It was what she protected. The right to dignity. The right to say no without being punished. The right to exist in a store, on a sidewalk, in a fitting room, without justifying your presence. Naomi didn't demand the world applaud her. She demanded it listen. The officer who tried to arrest her, he lost his badge, but kept his job on the condition that he attend a full-year community accountability program. Julia stepped down quietly and entered a restorative justice course. No one dragged them. Naomi didn't need them to be destroyed. She needed them to change. But the most important moment came days later. Naomi was at home, cooking dinner, when her daughter walked in 10 years old, eyes wide, holding her mother's old law badge. "Were you scared?" "Mom." Naomi thought about it, thought about the dressing room, the hands reaching for her, the silence after she said no. "No," she answered. "I was prepared." Her daughter nodded. "One day, I want to be like you." Naomi smiled, but she didn't say thank you. Instead, she said something else, something simple, something true. "Don't be like me. Be better. Be brave earlier. Speak up sooner. And if anyone makes you feel small, don't wait for permission to stand tall." The lesson wasn't about power. It was about preparation. Not just to survive, but to rewrite the ending. So many stories like Naomi's end in silence, or worse, in shame. But not this one. This one ended in policy, in reflection, in a law that didn't just protect Naomi, but every person who came after her. Because the truth is, Naomi wasn't the exception. She was just the one who said, "Enough." And maybe, the next time someone like her walks into a store, they won't be asked to hand over their bag. They'll be greeted with something rare, something earned, something she fought for with everything except rage, respect.